I finally just got done watching the first season of Grand Blue Dreaming, the anime that originally came out back in the summer 2018 season. And I gotta say, after watching 12 episodes of the show, it's pretty good. Do I think that this is like my go to summer anime that I would recommend? I don't really think so, in my opinion, but I respect it. And that's what I'm here to talk about is why I respect the hell of the show and give you like a little bit of a sneak peek of how I feel about season two. Because right now, I personally think that as of me watching that first episode, finally catching up on Grand Blue season two, I think season two is gearing up to be a much stronger outing than the first season is. Which is not to say that the first season of Grand Blue was terrible by any means. I want to make that clear. I enjoyed Grand Blue Dream, the first season. And I just want to talk about it and get my thoughts and feelings out of the way because this is a show that, once again, I've been pushing back for how many years now because this was recommended to me for so long for me to give the show a watch, give it a shot. And I finally watched all 12 episodes, and I just want to share my thoughts and feelings and just get it all out of the way. So once again, Grand Blue Dreaming, an anime that came out back in the summer 2018 season by Zero G Studios. Summer 2018, to kind of recap what happened that year, we had some pretty big shows that came out around the season, with the third season of Attack on Titan being one of the biggest seasons, most talked about seasons of that time period, to Overlord Season 3 being a bit of a dismal mess, but despite that, it was super popular from what I've heard. Banana Fish being one of the best and most underrated shows come out of 2018, and obviously to the beginnings of the first season of Cells at Work. I mean, we had like a pretty stacked summer 2018, and I just for some reason just didn't have any interest in watching Grand Blue for reasons that, again, at the time I just wasn't crazy about it. I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I've always been told to just push it back. And then you have the studio itself, Zero G Studios, which given their track record, as you can see, Zero G Studios doesn't have a pretty big rep sheet, unfortunately. Again, they did just come out recently with a pretty shitty anime, which I will say is one of the worst animes of the year at the moment, with the Beheneko anime, which is absolutely dog shit as hell. But Zero G Studios is known for giving us not just one, but two seasons of the One Room series, which is this really shitty, really weird POV anime where it's about a bunch of cute girls in a POV setting and they're just like talking to you, playing around, and doing all sorts of weird shit. And again, I never liked One Room. I thought it was a really weird POV attempt of an anime per se, and I just think it was just like a weird show and a waste of time to talk about. But I digress. Despite Zero G Studio's background, I think they really did hit it big with Grand Blue when they came out with this show back in 2018. And I gotta say, right off the bat, when going to the show, I was thinking that okay, it's gonna be like a beach fun, nuts and butts, let's have fun, drink some beers, and have some fun at the pool or at the beach. And this show surprisingly did touch on subject matter that I was not expecting at all for Grand Blue Dreaming. So for starters, I guess to get the elephant out of the room right away, this is like one of the major criticisms I'm going to also immediately throw out there. The animation. Sorry, oh god, me just talking about animation just now got me to cough. But I'm not lying when I say this. I think the animation for Grand Blue Dreaming's first season hasn't. It's not that it hasn't aged all too well. It's more like it was not perfect. There wasn't like a full balance of the animation. And what I mean by that is that there are moments in the show where it's animated so beautifully, and that the close-up shots are like really good, really crisp, and like every movement when it comes to going to the ocean or drinking some cold brewskis, or a moment where you have characters going ballistic with their facial expressions, which I'll get into. Those are like the main highlights. But there are times where if it's like a faraway still shot or such, it ends up being like really pad, really stale. It actually feels like background animation at times to the point where it feels like it wasn't animated properly and consistently throughout each of these 12 episodes. Now, that's not to say that happens with every single episode and it doesn't happen all the time, but it does stick out like a sore thumb, unfortunately, and I just cannot ignore that. And then you have the fact that there's just the hype and the feeling and the mood of what the show's all about. Again, I love this show. I love where it's heading. Would this be my recommended summer anime that I would recommend for anyone who wants to watch anime over the summer and get hyped and jump the fuck up about? Uh, Not really, unfortunately, because once again, and this is where I get a little bit of some like of my compliments more or less out of the way. There are moments where in Grand Blue Dreaming, this shows humor and wittiness and just downright like despicable acts in a good way. Reminds me of some pretty big shows that I've talked about in the past, like Prison School, with its really outlandish facial expressions. Like there are moments where it just reminds me nuts to butts and the comedic humor and subject matter and like the tons and tons of misdirection that happens in Grand Blue straight reminds me of Prison School. And then there are moments where like the characters, especially with our two main characters here with Iori Kitahara and Kohei Imamura, where these two make some of the raunchiest, craziest jokes ever, and they make some of the most iconic facial expressions that when looking back at these 12 episodes, I'm like, holy shit, I remember these because these were meme-fied the fuck a lot within the past couple of years. And it's like really crazy how big this show was meme-fied a lot because of it. And believe me, the facial expressions of this show is not only reminiscent of Prison School, but it also reminds me of Golden Boy to an extent, especially with like the sexual humor that is being talked about and displayed, and it's really plastered throughout the Grand Blue Dreaming altogether. So, with that being said, what is the show all about? What is it about? I mean, look, to kind of sum it up in a nutshell, it's about our main character, Iori Kitahara, who essentially moves into his uncle's diving shop, the Grand Blue, to start his college life. And he joins a diving club, which coincidentally uses the Grand Blue as its base of operation. And he realizes that going into the first season of college, that it's not as what he hope to believe that it's not going to be all rainbows and sunshines of how it is with your typical anime starring your new school life cliche. Nope. Our boy Iori has to go through some crazy shit to survive immediately when he starts his journey in the Grand Blue. But he does have a dream in mind, and his dream is to be able to dive and see the ocean for what it is. It's a different world, a different perspective. And throughout these 12 episodes, we see that slowly but surely progressing in the show, where it actually ends on like a really cool, really heartfelt moment. But at the same time, it also gives us a really cool glimpse of like how it is to spend time with your friends and people alike, and realize that sometimes the friends that you argue with and the friends that you kind of poke fun at end up being the closest friends you wouldn't expect. The biggest example being the relationship between Kitahara-san and Imamura-kun. And both of them essentially are like at one point like rivals in the same university, but soon as the show has progressed further and further into the show, we see that these two essentially have a pretty crazy bond with each other and have like similarities that are somewhat agreeable with towards one another when it comes to an argument here and there. And there are times where we have our main girl like Chisa Kotogawa and even Aina, or as they refer to in the show, Keiki, where both of these girls are kind of like the voice of reasoning, if that makes sense. But there are times where Chisa kind of gets caught up in Kitahara's bullcrap and she can't take it anymore. And then there's Keiki, where after a pretty big stunt that happened within the show itself, she changes up her image and she went from like looking like a clown to where she now looks like this, more or less. And again, there's a lot of heartfelt, really cool character building developments in the show that I really do like about it. And then we can't forget the fact that I really got thrown off the loop when I thought that just when I thought these were gonna not be the main characters. Originally, I thought the main characters were gonna be these two, honestly. But it turns out these were like essentially the enablers in getting them to drink and shit. And that's where I think I can kind of sort of summarize what the show's all about. Because, like I said, this show for me really just is like a perfect encapsulation of just having a good time, having a blast, just relaxing and chilling, and like at the same time getting like that summertime feeling that I feel like nowadays not a lot of people get the chance to experience. And again, for this show to come out back in summer 2018, it is really respectable in its own right because, again, while some of the jokes may have not hit, maybe some of the serious ones don't hit as hard as I hoped for, I think the show was respectable enough that, honestly, I can see why there was so much hype surrounding it. But is it the show for me that I would recommend as like my go-to summer show? Unfortunately, no. Again, I just think that there are times where maybe the humor is a bit over the top and gets a little too annoying at times. There's also moments where I felt that maybe the character dynamics with some of them do not mesh well, or it kind of feels a little bit forced with how the characters mesh with each other, was one person over the other. Um, but again, the theme song slaps. The um, the final moments of the show with the Okinawa arc, you could say, was definitely a massive highlight to really sum up what Grand Blue was all about, what it was trying to aim for, and essentially focusing on the one thing, which was Kitaharu's dream of being able to dive and conquer his fear of not being able to swim. And I really do like that it ends on such a pretty big, but I guess really wholesome cliffhanger, if mind you. And the fact that we do have a season two finally here and there is really saying something. Because I will say, going transition from this first season now into the second season, I think the first season of Grand Blue Dream season two is already looking so much better than the first season. And the reason I say that is for one, my complaints about the animation from the first season, I felt like they fixed the hell out of it. Like now the animation is just really smooth, like surprisingly really smooth, and I couldn't catch like a single animation blemish at all. Whereas the first episode, I was able to catch like a ton of blemishes right off the bat within the first two episodes. But so far, from this first episode, I'm absolutely loving Grand Blue season two, and I really can't wait to see like how this show kind of continues the summer themes, and the vibes going into the second season. Again, I know I'm pretty behind right now since I just got done watching the first season and finishing it, but overall, I think Grand Blue Dreaming is just a really good show. It's an okay show. Would this be my cup again? Well, I would recommend this to anyone that wants to watch this. Sure, why not? But for me, as someone that would be like, oh yeah, would I be down to rewatch this again? Not really. I just think that there are parts of it that kind of aren't like too good to really talk about, or maybe there's some parts of it that may have not aged all too well ish in a way. But again, I think this is a good, fine show for anyone that wants to watch a summertime anime themed show. And I'll leave it at that. So, with that being said, Grand Blue Dreaming, um, I would probably currently give this like a decent 7, like a decent 7 on this thing. It's really good, it's really enjoyable. I just think that right now, with where season 2 is starting right now and where it's heading, I think season 2 is gearing up to be like a really strong second season, and this one personally might be my preferred Grand Blue season over the first one. But we'll see. Maybe I'm gonna bite my own tongue on that comment, and who knows. But yeah, wanted to talk about this just to finally be committed and say that I finally got this done. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Later.